is where we have this data is coming from. Data from analysis is coming from Jeffrey Sachs' work, and that is the data that we can all use and be comfortable in using. Overall, we know that countries are performing. Some countries are performing well, some not really. As we can see, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria are doing relative well. Kenya, all of them, per the analysis of the data, all of them are getting a score over 60% and above. We still have those below the 50% threshold, being Niger, Somalia, South Sudan. So again, there is the miss achievements. Whereas some are doing very well, some are also have a long way to go. What is there? Yeah. So that is on the country specific perspective. But the Jeffrey Sachs index also takes us through using the SDG index score. The SDGs are 17. We use the index from 1 to 17 to know the performance of country, and also to know the performance of a continent. And what I presented here has to do with the performance of Sub-Saharan Africa. Overall, yes, we are at the threshold of about 53% as of 2022. That is marginally above the 50% level, which one could consider as pass. But then, in terms of the from 2020 to 2022, what we see is that our performance rate is very low. We measure the growth of the health of our economy with GDP, the same way we can measure the performance, the health of SDG using the Jeffrey Sachs SDG index score, and then we see how best we'll be performing. We've not been, as African and Sub-Saharan for that matter, we've not been really moving too fast or too well, because the rate at which we move is on average less than 1%. Uniquely, what we see from 2021 to 2022, we are seeing a negative performance rate, and giving us a negative 17. So now, on taking the SDGs one by one, we have to go through. Few of the goals are really doing well. Goals 12 and 13 in Africa. Goals 8, they are all above 60. But majority of them are again trending below the 50. In fact, the index shows that overall score for goal 1, which is to reduce poverty, is still on 24.3%. Hunger, we are doing a bit better and much better. We can do more, 54%, and so is the data. So this gives an overall picture of what the average is per a particular goal as we perform, as the performance has been in Africa. What this tells us is this: we have a target. This is, you set a goal, you want to know when you achieve the goal. So you have a target. Globally, we are around 60%, 63% around the globe. And by 2023, by 2030, we have to achieve all the 100%. That's what we set with out of the 169 target. On current trend, it looks as if we are nowhere near achieving that. What we see from this diagram tells us that in the case of the world, globally, we are far behind time. We will be able to achieve the SDGs in the year 2080. Looking at the abysmal performance of Sub-Saharan African countries, we are almost a decade away from achieving the target we set to achieve by 2030. The question is, what did we know that from the beginning? Possibly No, because the performance is based on the trend that we had from 2000 to using the trend based on our best performance from 2000 from under the MDG, Sub-Saharan Africa will be able to attain all the 169 goals by the year 2146. We have challenges, as Chairman mentioned. Some of these challenges could be the policy coherence. We have so many targets that we have to deal with. We are faced with multiple challenges. We have limited resources, so the financing of the SDGs are not really progressing as we want. We need almost $1 trillion per year, according to the SACS report 2022. There are other figures that others also quote as well. The SDGs are very ambitious, and we need to work with it and see how best we can improve the welfare and transform our continent. Data monitoring progress is also one of the challenges that we have. As the chair mentioned, 12% of our 140 targets are those that we have available data. If we set to do this, we need to know what the impact is on the life of our people, the progresses that we make, and how we need to improve upon. That is very weak. There are great institutions, the academic institutions and more institutions, research institutions that countries and agencies need to partner with to get all of these done. Again, that is not really thriving as expected. These are some of the weaknesses. Focusing on financing. We need rights. I mean, without finance, we cannot spend. We don't know how to go about it, because everything has a cost element. And when you have the cost, you need to know what the benefits will be. In the case of Ghana, our finance minister, based on the 2021 Times report, Ghana needs $522.3 billion to achieve SDGs. That's by 2030. In yearly, we have a financing of about 52.3 billion in the case of Ghana. Currently, we have a financing deficit of about 43 billion. Nigeria has a financing deficit of about 10 billion. All of these are available, which means that we still need more to be able to spend in achieving these goals. How do we get the finances? Of course, every finance mainly are from the government through domestic revenue mobilization, which the case of Africa is very low. Development partners are also helping, but again, not as much as meeting the financing gap. Philanthropies, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, a few more are also helping, but again, not meeting the financing gap. What it is at the moment is that because the SDGs are within the national framework, these are linked to the national budget. So there is some financing of all these targets, which is good, but not enough. Governments and countries need to come out with have alternative ways of financing, using some development financing instruments, innovative financing instruments to raise funds to be able to finance the goals that we have set. Just recently, the UN General Secretary General is requesting G20 for additional, meaning that some money has been given, but we need extra 500 billion per year to be able to finance the SDGs. That is good, but yet will that do the work? Because we know that there is a huge financing gap. Moving from knowing that every country has some amount that is being spent on SDGs, I present to you the case of Malawi in the 2023 budget. They spent 41% extra between 2022 to 2023. They increased their budget by 41% on social dimension related activities, on economic dimension related activities. They increased their budget by 60%. when it comes to environmental related activities, the budget amount of money spent by the government of Malawi increased by 200%. That is good if you have been able to do something to find out. The question we will need to do at this particular time, knowing very well that we have well-defined goals, the goals we want to do everything possible to achieve these goals 169. The issue we have, again, we don't have it all. No country has it all. So we need to ask our fundamental question. Since we don't have it all, and we have a responsibility towards transforming the life and improving the welfare of our people, then let's do the smartest step first. With focus on certain priorities, I make reference to what I make reference to the Global Survey on Sustainability Report 2022. This is a report that follows what the people of the world wants to see as their priority. In the case of Africa, 56.9% of the view that quality education should be followed by good health and well-being. The third is the climate change. On the other one, the West focus more on the North America. You see 64% on climate, good health is 33, education follow. But totally around the globe, we see total demand for 51% of the view that we're going for climate change, followed by health and then quality. That is beautiful because they know each country understand its needs very well, and each country has its own development paradigm that wants to follow. So all of us can never be on the same path, on what our priorities are in times like this that we need to set. On the basis of that, we are the Copenhagen consensus. We do this what we do very well. Since we are at halftime and we are not moving the way we have to move because we don't have all the resources to spend our needs, we need to pause. We need to have a second reflection of what we are committed to, because our people are always crying. We say, why don't you focus on the best things first? Our analysis focus on low and middle income countries where Africa countries are all in, but we set a target. If I invest one Malawi kwacha, I expect to get no less than 15 Malawi kwacha in return, because we're looking at the cost and the benefits to what investments that we make. This gives us about 12 of these. I present to you with in line with the global survey that shows that education should be our top priority, health should be our second best, and the climate change third. Education, if you look at education, we really achieve a lot under the MDG because we focus more on enrollment. But SDG 4 is asking us to focus more on quality education. What we know is this: we are going to school, but we are not learning. So we have close to about 90% enrollment. Everyone goes to school, but you ask them simple question about what's the color of this at the primary level, you find it very difficult to get the answer. We are going to school and we are not learning. There is a very good data analysis shows that if you improve learning outcome, not just going to school, that improves your growth, and that might be targeting SDG 8. Obviously, that might be targeting innovation, SDG 9. But what we see from this graph diagram clearly shows that in the circle, except for Yemen and Nepal that are not within the countries in Africa in this bracket, we see that Africa countries, our learning score is far below expectation. We are below the 400 score, but what we expect is to get 560 and above score. And this score is based on what we call the PISA program for international student assessment. That is good. So if you go to Jeffrey Sachs' website, PISA is missing. There is no one is providing any information about our PISA in that database. that doesn't mean we really focus. Are we focusing on education improvement? With just two simple solutions will help us do that. Learning according to your level, not necessarily learning at your age. We need to know that you cannot have the same age, but you might not be at the same level. Again, improving on pedagogy. Teachers have the best way of improving their learning and then their notes. Learning at the right level with technology or without technology, all of us give us a very high return. And I might say learning with technology is being done currently in the case of Malawi, and the minister for Malawi has now, there was a pilot project and that is doing well in Malawi and is now going to be scaled up. So we need to introduce some this, let's spend on these policies. Our mothers and children are dying. It takes nothing. By the age of 28 days, less than a month, the children are dying. 250, 295 women, 2.3 women are dying. We need nothing. We need, when you see the data shows the maternal mortality, in as much as all of these things are reducing, of course, we can do better. Sub-Saharan Africa recording high, the rest are below. What do we need to curb or to reduce, or even, to a large extent, do with that newborn mortality? We just need simple investments in neonatal resuscitation. Give them a pump in their nose, how the doctors handle it. It costs us marginally nothing. Very small amount will give us the greatest benefits of 87. Just recently, again, with the Russia-Ukraine war, all of us are crying. Supply constraints, we don't even have wheat, our fertilizer input, and a lot have negative impact on our growth and causing inflationary measures. What do we do? And later investment in agriculture, because the spending in terms of research in agriculture is more skewed towards the West, with out of the 100% of global budget for research and development for agriculture, 80 goes to the West, with 20 and very little comes to Africa. We can do this by improving the food, that will improve our production. When we improve our production, most definitely we have the issue of food security will be addressed. Again, improvement in agriculture through this R&D can also have direct impact in trade when in times we're talking about after. What we're asking is that Africa must realign and focus on those that will transform, have the greatest impact. And one is investment in research and development for agriculture. Further, we talk about money, yes, but we also know that the high level of corruption. What do we need to do? Simple investment in digital solutions. In the case of Mauritius and Uganda, they have invested just $2 million in setting up and improving their e-procurement programs. In the case of Mauritius, that reduced their expenditure on procurement by 20%. This is wonderful thing. Something we all have to adhere to. Something, it takes nothing. It's just about 2 million. Of course, obviously, if that must be scaled up all over the country, could have a higher cost. But then the returns on this, if that can scale down about 20%, cut down corruption, because we need money for the for the good things, the education, the health, all those things that we are looking for, and improve our economy. So let's invest in digital solutions and have this done. I wouldn't go too much, but research, all of these are based on research, and this research have shown that the benefits outweigh the cost, and we have it in this book, which anyone who is interested, I can share, and we can have more discussion. Takeaway message to you, my fellow Africans, ladies and gentlemen, is that promising everything is like you are not prioritizing. I mean, you can't say that all the 169 target is equivalent to is equivalent to setting priorities. Absolutely not. There are too many. We don't have all the resources. We can't focus. We don't even know what to do. Let's set the right priorities and let's get it done as best thing first. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow colleagues, Africans, as we move and we all aspire to be at the SD Summit next week, somewhere 18th and 19th, we need to have a message. The simple message is that we need to admit and know that we have the challenges around. We don't have the resources. The donor inflows are also not coming as expected. We need to do that which will be more rational, that which will have a more beneficial impact on the life of our people, that will transform our economy. I thank you for listening to me. Viva Africa. Viva. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Raf. I feel like just taking these documents to UNGA so that we just present it as African priorities. You did a whole lot of work because I also agree with you that the link between the SDGs and the African Agenda 2063 is the only way out for the future of Africa we want. I don't know why we are finding it difficult to synergize these two documents so that Africa can run with it. Then also, moving on, an average of less than 1% in Africa calls for urgent concern and attention. Because the reports that are coming out, Africa is the least and is the highest hit in all of these problems. Are we talking about debt, which you have just talked about now? The debt profile is surging, the huge financial gap in achieving the SDGs. How do we bring all this to the table and to reality so that the people that are in my community will be able to understand what the SDG has come to do in their lives? I don't want to talk about the education. When you finish the education part and then enter into maternal mortality, I was thinking, where do we start from? How did we get to this in Africa? Goal 13 is doing well in Africa when it comes to reporting on performance. But the performance indicator is too low because we are still ravaged by flood and other natural disasters from west to east to south, all over Africa. So how do we proceed? This is what we want to hear from the next speaker, who will be speaking on climate justice for sustainable development. So I would like to introduce Bright Siri, who works with the Botswana Council of NGOs. He is an environmental advocate who has worked for more than a decade in roles related to human and environmental rights in Malawi and Botswana and in South Africa. He has provided leadership on civic engagement with duty-bearing public entities at national and international levels on climate diplomacy, environmental arbitrations and protocols, and ordinances on agrarian reform and minority rights. Bright holds a Master of Environmental Law and Policy degree obtained from Vermont Law School, in addition to a bachelor's degree in environmental policy. So you have the floor, Bright.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's afternoon in Botswana. I have 15 minutes to share with you what I was assigned to relay to the platform. And so I'll go straight to share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so my presentation is on climate justice for sustainable development. And just when we talk about climate crisis or climate change, we all now agree that it is no longer a crisis. It has graduated from being a crisis. Now we are looking at it as an emergency. So we have moved from where it used to be a crisis. We have to handle it in that respect, that it is now an emergency. And just to share with you the facts, I looked at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Fourth Assessment Report, which is titled "The Earth's Climate is Tipping Off Balance." It was published some few years ago. And this report affirms what we all already know, that climate change is proceeding faster than predicted by the world's scientific body on climate change. And we must act swiftly to stabilize it within a range fit for both human life and well-being. And this report, it actually flags out Africa as the most vulnerable continent to climate change. What the report says is that, the global warming that we are experiencing is very likely to be larger than the global annual mean warming throughout the continent in all seasons. And what it means is that the mean temperature, as it increases, roughly 1.5 times the global mean response, meaning that warming of as little as 1.5 degrees Celsius globally could mean that Africa warms by well over 2 degrees. And now that we have said that Africa is on the front line, what it also means is that the communities in Africa have now been placed, on the front lines of this emergency, and they are likely going to pay the highest price if the efforts that we are undertaking to secure climate justice are unsuccessful. So for Africa, for us who are living in Africa, this is not just an emergency. When we talk about global warming or the science surrounding it, we are also relating it to the economic and the social crisis, the political crisis. That's where it is causing even much more damage. The food and energy crisis, we are seeing so much energy rationing, electricity rationing in South Africa, in Malawi, even in Botswana right here. The ecological crisis, which is exposing the livelihoods of local communities in Africa to shocks and stresses, and yet there are no safeguards or cushioning mechanisms for this, for the African communities, to be able to meaningfully secure a decent livelihood. The climate emergency is also undermining our food systems and also the social rights. And it is the reason why we now have an increase in discrimination and violence against women. It has caused forced migrations, loss of sovereignty over natural resources, and has degraded our ability to continuously, live in harmony with nature. So what we are saying is, we applaud as Africans to now note that the continued climate change negotiations that are happening are not taking into consideration human rights approaches, so that the remedial actions which are being proposed, the reparations, the compensations to the African communities, those ones that are most vulnerable to the effects, they are being done in tandem with what is what is right in terms of human rights. And without a change in the approach to these endless negotiations, we are going to see that the whole agenda on climate emergency will be a failed development paradigm that will end up being, hijacked. It will be much more market-based oriented, basically, which is not there to solve problems of global warming, but for the mere aspects of profit from those that are trying to seize the opportunity from the sufferings of caused in the African communities. We are also noting that the largest sphere of historical current emissions on greenhouse gases, it is actually emanating from the Western world, the industrialized world. Actually, the African continent is only contributing, even up to now, where within the limits of 3% of the emissions, according to the World Bank report published in 2019. The previous presenter gave a lot of case studies about Malawi. And also, if you go to Malawi right now, Malawi has got 5 lakes. So apart from Lake Malawi, the second biggest lake used to be Lake Shirwa. If you go to Malawi right now, Lake Shirwa is the smallest lake of the 5 lakes. It used to be the second biggest. It is drying out completely because of climate variations caused by industrial activities, not necessarily happening in Malawi, because Malawi is really poor, not very industrialized. But these climate variations and the warming thereof are emanating from the Western Hemisphere. Where I live right now in Botswana, Lake Ngami has completely dried out. And it is becoming a death trap for livestock. Livestock now have to navigate in the muddy paddles because it is actually fed from a recharging aquifer system in the Okavango. And that issue, the Okavango is no longer able to do that because of so much drought conditions in Botswana. So I tried to look at, what is it that is being demanded by African civil society organizations in the region? And I picked up the following. So duty-bearing entities, both at national and regional levels, should tackle the root causes of vulnerability, such as poverty, human rights violations, discrimination, inequality, and inadequate access to resources and livelihoods. We are also saying as civil society that, governments and those holding, public office with duty-bearing powers should find mechanisms to identify local priorities and appropriate actions and define approaches that should be able to assess risks, capabilities, capacities, which involves all stakeholders, including the local authorities and the community-based organizations. And we also need to see ourselves being able to be integrated into the working groups where joint action plans are happening between governments and civil society or non-state actors, so that we are able to prepare for and respond to the identified risks and identify appropriate and targeted risk reduction activities, so that we are able to lessen the effects of expected hazards and also cushion our communities from the vulnerabilities caused by this climate emergency. I thank you, Pula.
Thank you so much, Phil. Siri, sorry, so that I will not spoil your name. So, colleagues, what we have heard now is not different from the concept of the SDGs that was given to us. Human rights approach to climate change is something that must be upheld all over the world, including Africa. And being involved in the COP that usually happen every year, I begin to wonder what COP means for us in Africa. COP27 was meant to be an African COP, and how will we have our government engaged in the outcome document that arises from this COP was a question that I asked, and I have not seen anyone answer me this question. Right now, we are preparing to go for COP. Is it a main jamboree, or we are trying to address the issues that follow climate crisis on the African continent? We all agree that the problems that are coming from climate crisis is not unconnected with conflicts that are happening in various countries right now. And this is fight over natural resources management. Who manages our resources? the minerals, the natural resources that we are getting, how is being utilized to protect the human rights of Africans and also reduce poverty that has dispersed all Africans. Thank you so much, Bright, and I want us to open the floor for comment for a few minutes, and then we move on. Thank you. Please, let's have brief comments. We know we are out of our time. Brief comments, please, and questions. Do we have comments, questions to the speaker? Can you hear me, colleague?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Do we have comments, questions to the speaker?
There's a hand from Kenneth.
Oui, moi je demande la parole.
Okay, go
J'ai
ahead.
levé la main.
You have the floor.
Ok, donc vraiment merci aux deux intervenants. Je voudrais faire deux petites interventions en lien donc avec ce qui a été dit. Je suis d'accord avec le premier intervenant par rapport aux questions d'augmentation des budgets au niveau des différents pays. En fait, la tendance est vraiment générale. Mais ce que je souhaiterais dire et qui n'a pas fait ressortir et sur quoi nous devons en tant que GCAP Africa insister, c'est véritablement les questions de l'utilisation de ces ressources pour le bien des communautés que les gouvernements représentent. Cela est véritablement un gros problème. Et je pense que Ingo, en introduisant, a mentionné le cas des coups d'État auxquels un certain nombre de pays comme le Burkina Faso, le Niger, le Mali font face. C'est véritablement dû à la mauvaise utilisation du peu de ressources disponibles pour améliorer les conditions de vie des populations. Donc, ça, c'est vraiment un élément fondamental en tant que GCAP, en tant qu'activiste, en tant qu'acteur de la société civile, il faut vraiment qu'on fasse très attention. On note aussi, on ne peut pas réussir la mise en œuvre des ODD sans une véritable implication des communautés que nous représentons dans la définition des priorités. Et ça, véritablement, ça manque aussi dans beaucoup de situations. Et il faut aussi qu'en tant que GCAP, on puisse le souligner. Sur la question de l'éducation, je suis aussi d'accord, mais il faut vraiment aller au-delà de ce que nous avons actuellement. Il faut faire des réformes audacieuses pour permettre que l'éducation puisse répondre aux priorités de nos communautés. Les choses sont enseignées aux élèves, sont enseignées aux apprenants dans les universités, mais quand les gens sortent, qu'est-ce qu'ils sont capables de faire? Ils ne sont pas utiles à eux-mêmes, ils ne sont pas utiles à leur communauté, et ça fait vraiment un problème au niveau de la société. Il faut vraiment qu'on arrive à fournir cette éducation-là qui répond aux besoins des communautés. Si une communauté fait une éducation qui, à la fin, permet de savoir comment on peut élever du cheptel, comment on peut élever des animaux et pouvoir contribuer au développement de la communauté, il faut lui fournir une éducation qui lui permet d'avoir des compétences pour mettre cela en œuvre. Et également, je voudrais pointer un aspect, il y a ce manque de solidarité et c'est un point...
to cut off their question, it's too long, please. Please,
yeah, I just want to mention a last point.
We've taken the whole time before. We still have one more speaker.
Okay, merci. Thank you.
Do we have any other hand, please?
Yes, thank you for the presentation.
1 minute,
I'm
please.
looking at the local initiative. Okay, so local initiative, because sometimes we leave the local actors out of it. And it's very important that we go back and visit the local community, empower them, then we can show what they have done to resolve on the SDGs. So I'm looking at more on empowering the local communities and showcase what they are doing. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Anyone? Lower your hand, Kenneth. Okay. I give the speakers 1 minute each to respond, please.
Sorry, there was an echo on my side, so I didn't get it very well. There was a big echo here.
Okay. I think the last speaker said he's looking at what local initiatives do you have to address these issues. 1 minute, please, just 1 minute. Thank you.
Wow. I mean, for my presentation, I will say that the locals are involved. There are locals that are involved in the sense that is how the country set up their national policies, agenda. So at the time of getting the policies or whatever needs to be done at the local level to transform, to bring development, all those ones are captured. So there isn't anything much I can add because but the policy formulation has been done with the local involvement as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, in the context of climate crisis, it was actually a climate week in Africa this week. I actually noted that in Nairobi there was a lot of events happening on climate change, and I'm happy to say that there are several African countries who sent delegations to these events. And in those delegations, you would note that some were just, local community leadership, like village level kind of structures who are representing, local communities. There were youth that were represented in those events. And I'm also happy to note that even that event has ended, it produced some, what we call this, statements which have been sent to national governments, and the ones that are focal points in this part of Africa, especially Botswana, Namibia, I've also seen Zambia. You note that most of the focal points that are disseminating these messages, some of them are just at the local levels. They're trying to engage the local authorities on what has to be done, what are the next steps, what are the action plans. So it's encouraging to note that even in the efforts that are happening at the regional levels, they are trickling down to involve participation of local constituents, where it is not just talking about issues, top down, but it is also engaging those ones at the forefront of the crisis, bring their attentions, and then producing statements based on their needs and aspirations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the two panelists for the good job done. Colleagues, we will be moving to the next session, and we have one speaker, Dr. Ramau Xavier. Dr. Ramau Xavier is currently leading the Just Economy work at Oxfam in South Africa, and is also the country representative of Oxfam in Mozambique. He is a practitioner in development policy and research. He is passionate about international development with emphasis in participatory governance and public management. He is also interested in the role of regional and international organizations in advancing fair and just sustainable development agendas. especially around debt, inequality, fiscal justice, climate change, and energy transition. Dr. Savia holds a bachelor's degree in education from the Pedagogical University of Mozambique, a master's degree in public advocacy from Victoria University, Australia, and a Doctor of Philosophy in International Relations from the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. He will be speaking on the debt challenge in achieving the SDGs, the call for global solidarity and local solutions to debt traps. Dr. Savia, you have the floor.
Well, thank you so much. I would like to just start by thanking the organizers, especially through my brother Kavenko, for inviting me to join this conversation, which is a very important. I think the keynotes at the beginning set the context of our conversation. I won't be going that way. The technology has impacted the way I will approach my presentation, because I am in other meeting right now. So I'm taking a few minutes to share some of the key issues related to, the Sustainable Development Goals and its relation with international solidarity, looking at local solutions. To start with, I just want to highlight the issue that the Sustainable Development Goals were set in a time that Africa was experiencing a very steady development trajectory. But with the time, some compounding new crises came in and impacted on the capacity of Africa as the global achieving the SDGs. And the key message that I bring here is that the international and global solidarity using global solutions has failed Africa to at least be in a trajectory to achieve at least 50% of the SDGs. We have heard that even globally, only 12% of the SDG are set to be achieved by 2030, which is a shame. But the issue, in fact, is that for Africa, one of the challenging contemporary issue is the debt. The debt is not a bad issue as such. I believe everyone knows that, development has been made by people owing money to institutions, be institutional financial institutions or government money, but people and governments and states, they build their economies through debt. But the issue here is that our debt has achieved a level of unsustainability, and that is the problem. Why we got to that, I'll take you through some of my slides. As I said, I won't present all of them. One of the biggest issue is around finance. The global finance architecture did not really provide the adequate financing to countries, mainly in Africa, to translate their promises in actual actions to achieve the SDGs. That is one thing. I have some figures. I think someone is now running the presentation, and I think that. The second level of the issue is that by the time Africa was trying to address some of the major issues on SDG. We had this pandemic that hit everyone, but as we know, the impact of COVID was different from country to country and region to region. Countries in Africa, they experienced a very harsh impact of COVID. Why? Because our own institutions and our financial capacity are really low, even without COVID. So COVID just came to demonstrate how weak we are to respond to key issues. So that is a second level of the issue that make us being very far from achieving the sustainable development goals. And at a third level of that, it's the governance that surrounds African countries, governance of debt, but also governance of any other sector. One of the biggest issues in governance is that Africa has this phenomenon of corruption. I wouldn't talk anything without touching that. The issue of corruption is a worldwide phenomenon, but for us as Africans, the corruption is really hitting us twice or thrice. Why? Because our financial capacity is low. So if people use money to issues that were not planned for or for personal gain, that also impact the capacity of government in providing services. So that is one of the biggest issues. The second issue in the corruption line is the issue of illicit financial flows. Most of the resources that we get, local resources or otherwise, those resources are then channeled out of Africa, building the economies of the already developed countries. And that is an issue that impacts our capacity to achieve the SDGs. And the third level of that is our low fiscal scope that make our financial capacity very weak to really address issues around health, education, and other social sectors like social protection. So those issues are really preventing African countries to achieve the sustainable development goal. And what are the possible ways out? One of the possible ways out is to really strengthen the capacity of countries to improve their revenue base through fiscal mechanism or through using properly our endowed natural resources that we have. And this takes me to an issue that is a present issue today, the issue of climate. There is a huge discussion worldwide around how developed countries that are more and more discovering wealth that is underneath their soils, how do they use those resources to address issues of health, education, and other social sectors? While we are discussing the issue of climate change, the issue of reducing emissions, and this brings the issue of energy transition, which is one of the biggest issues that is being discussed in this week at the African Climate Summit and African Climate Week. So solutions exist at local level. What is needed is to address the issue of finance financing climate change solutions that are locally driven so that they respond people's needs. Even around SDGs, there are some local solutions that can be harnessed by a proper financing mechanism. Therefore, the international and global community needs to look at the finance or financing mechanisms that respond to the African needs and to African capacities, so that local-driven solution can be harnessed. So those are the key things I wanted to share. Thank you. Thank you once again. And I'm sorry to be so brief.
Oh, it's brief and very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Xavier.
Thank you.
So, colleagues, we are the highlight of this African People's Assembly. We all agree that the presentations from our resource persons, they are so educating, so emotional. In fact, I don't know what to say because it addresses all aspects of the issues that are facing us in Africa. So I would like to open the floor now for 2 minutes, and then we will now go to the next one, which is the outcome statement from this People's Assembly. Sorry, we have taken enough of your time because we spent 30 minutes away trying to figure out the translation. So we will soon be rounding up. Thank you. Do I see a hand? Okay, I see no hand. If you agree and permit me, we will move to the next item.
Thank you so much.
Moi, je voulais dire quelque chose juste avant que vous partiez.
Ok, Omar.
Ok, je voudrais commencer par remercier et féliciter les brillantes présentations qui ont été faites. Et ça donne une image concrète de la situation en Afrique sur les questions de paix, sur les questions de sécurité, sur les questions de changement climatique, les questions de protection sociale, mais également sur les questions de droits humains de manière générale. Et aujourd'hui, sur la question de la dette également, quand on analyse tout ça et qu'on le met dans un panier, on comprendra que les challenges sont grands, les défis sont vraiment grands et ça, c'est quelque chose d'extraordinaire. Et sur ce, je voudrais faire une petite comparaison en écoutant les différentes interventions pour dire qu'il y a un grand fossé, un grand écart qui existe entre ceux qui réfléchissent, ceux qui conçoivent les programmes et ceux qui en réalité les subissent et ceux qui les vivent. Donc, cette déconnexion fait en sorte que l'appropriation des ODD ou des politiques nationales pose problème. C'est pourquoi, moi-même, souvent, je me pose des questions. Quelle est effectivement l'utilité de toutes nos réflexions et de toutes nos actions? D'autant plus que depuis plusieurs années, on fait la même chose, on essaye de conscientiser, on tape sur la table, nous avons fait toutes les marches depuis Copenhague, partout où on est passé. Mais qu'est-ce que nous avons en réalité influencé? Qu'est-ce que nous avons effectivement aidé à changer? Ça, en réalité, c'est une interrogation que nous-mêmes, en tant qu'acteurs sur le terrain, que nous devons poser. Nos États, quels sont les efforts qu'ils ont faits? Il n'y a pas d'effort. Je pense qu'il ne faut pas qu'on se voile la face. Il n'y a pas d'effort. Il faut quand même qu'on le dise. Et pourtant, c'est nous qui participons à ces réunions pour valider, pour les aider à valider leurs documents. Et souvent, on passe ça sous silence. Et je pense qu'il serait mieux quand même qu'on se retrouve ou bien quand même qu'on redéfinisse notre rôle dans ce travail-là, dans cette action-là, qui aujourd'hui intègre tout le monde si nous voulons être effectivement restés dans le dispositif. Voilà ce que je voudrais mettre dans le panier parce que le temps n'est pas tellement élastique. Merci.
Thank you so much, Omar. So, colleagues, because of time, I would suggest that we put all our questions, our comments in the chat box so that the Secretariat can take them into consideration. We would like to move on to read the outcome document from this People's Assembly. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, great activists on the African continent and our friends from all over the world. This is a statement issued by participants during the African Regional People's Assembly held on 6 September 2023. We, the participants attending the African Regional People's Assembly online on this Wednesday, September 6, 2023, representing civil society organizations from Africa to discuss shared concerns about pressing social justice issues on the continent, hereby jointly make the following calls to African governments, the African Union, the United Nations, and the international community. 1. Sustainable Development Goals. We acknowledge the ongoing efforts by individual countries towards achieving the SDGs. However, we are concerned about the lagging progress in Africa, where a majority of countries are falling behind. With less than 8 years left until the 2030 target year, we call on governments to prioritize adequate budget allocations and other necessary resources for socio-economic sectors, develop effective policies, and promote regional cooperation to accelerate progress, especially as outlined in SDG 17. Emphasizing the principle of leaving no one behind, we urge governments to embrace inclusive and sustainable development that befits all segments of society, including marginalized groups. 2. Pandemic preparedness. We express concern about Africa's vulnerability during the COVID-19 pandemic due to limited vaccine production, with the continent producing less than 1% of the vaccine it requires. To enhance preparedness, we urge African governments and the African Union to strongly support the World Health Organization's public-centered mRNA technology transfer initiative, which can promote sustainable local vaccine production. If successful, this initiative shall provide solutions to other deadly and neglected tropical diseases that are mainly found in Africa, and to which big global pharmaceutical companies do not attach any economic value to invest in research or drug manufacturing. We further call for governments to secure a market share for vaccines produced through this initiative by allocating sufficient budget for procurement. Additionally, we encourage African governments to participate more actively in the ongoing conversations on development of a global pandemic treaty, and while at it also emphasize equitable vaccine distribution mechanisms. 3. National debt challenge. We are alarmed by the unsustainable levels of national debt in many African countries, hindering resource allocation to critical socio-economic sectors and undermining poverty reduction, SDG attainment, and overall development. Over 21 African countries are nearing catastrophic levels of high debt distress. These substantial public loans also pose threats to national sovereignty and independence, as they are guaranteed by major national institutions and key infrastructure. We propose the establishment of a comprehensive debt relief framework for highly indebted nations, including innovative financing mechanisms. We advocate for a fair global financial system that ensures equitable access to development financing for all countries. Moreover, we recommend the creation of a practical and binding mechanism under the African Union, allowing public participation in the process of contracting national loans that exceed certain thresholds, frequencies, or purposes to enhance public accountability beyond transactions for loan repayment. Social protection. We commend the African government collective commitment under the African Union in adopting the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the rights of citizens to social protection and social security on February 6, 2022. However, only 15 out of 54 countries have so far ratified this protocol. We urge all remaining countries to do so without delay and to establish national policy frameworks to operationalize the protocol, ensuring that all citizens can be shielded from the frequent socioeconomic shocks. Climate change. Climate change is already disrupting the individual livelihoods and national economies, particularly affecting vulnerable communities. Without effective management, if we continue to hinder poverty reduction, SDG achievement, and overall development, we call upon the UN to encourage developed countries, the largest carbon emitters, to honor their commitment in providing financing for climate change mitigation and adaptation in Africa and other developing countries, as previously agreed upon during international climate change conferences. Commitments should be measured by more actions and less talk. We also urge the United Nations to establish an effective mechanism to promote, monitor, and discourage countries from failing to honor their commitments. Peace and security. Sustainable development can only thrive in an environment of stable peace and security. Africa faces growing challenges of national insecurity, primarily driven by armed cross-border terrorist groups, exploiting religious motivations, particularly in the Sahel region. We emphasize that terrorism is an international threat that requires collective action beyond the borders of affected countries. We call on the international community to join hands with affected countries, sub-regional initiatives, and the African Union to address this challenge and its root causes, particularly poverty, which contributes to the recruitment of impoverished youth into unlawful activities. Additionally, we urge the international community to provide genuine and unconditional support and solidarity to African countries experiencing civil unrest, such as Guinea, Mali, Sudan, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Gabon, to strengthen their national democratic governance institutions that are accountable to their citizens. The usual and quick application of economic sanctions against these countries has greater negative impact on the poor more than it has to the intended rulers. We call upon the African Union to provide balanced and visionary leadership to realize these aspirations of the African people. Thank you. So the statement is signed by the organizations that are listed below. Thank you. So we will open for recommendations from participants. Is anybody there? Are you hearing me, guys, colleagues?
Yes, we can.
We are here.
Oh, okay, yes. So recommendations,
right here.
any addition to the statement before it goes out? Yeah. Thank you. Then before we now move to the closing remarks by Aminata.
Okay, there is none. I think the statement has captured everything. So I'll give the floor to Aminata to give us the closing remarks.
Donc, bonjour tout le monde. Au nom de tous les membres du GCAP et les autres partenaires, je tiens à remercier le communicateur, facilitateur pour l'Assemblée des peuples en Afrique. Il y a eu beaucoup de discussions par rapport au changement climatique qui demeure un défi réel, et aussi les questions de la dette. Je pense que la dette continue à être un problème. Ce n'est pas l'endettement qui est un problème, mais c'est la gestion de la dette. C'est les mécanismes d'endettement aussi qui sont des problèmes. Et aussi l'accès aux services sociaux de base. Parce que quand on parle d'ODD, on dit toujours de laisser personne de côté. Mais nous voyons, nous sommes à mi-chemin, mais il y a beaucoup de problèmes. Et les pays sont les mêmes. Donc, nous devons fournir beaucoup d'efforts pour que nous mettons la pression sur les décideurs, sur nos chefs de gouvernement et les Nations Unies pour que les ODD soient ce que nous souhaitons, ce qui a été mis en place en 2015, le 25 septembre 2015, où on a dit personne ne sera laissé de côté, il n'y aurait plus de pauvreté, il n'y aurait plus de misère, et la terre serait sauvée, les personnes seront sauvées. Donc, le monde entier serait juste et équitable. Donc, merci à tout le monde. Et je pense que nos contributions seront portées haut au niveau de l'Assemblée mondiale et aussi au niveau des assemblées nationales qui continuent aussi. Nous allons continuer à discuter, à faire des sensibilisations, à faire le plaidoyer. Et que Dieu nous montre l'année prochaine pour que nous soyons beaucoup plus organisés. Vous voyez, il y a le défi de l'Internet qui est là, le défi de communication. Donc, ça veut dire que les ODD jusqu'à présent, l'atteindre, c'est un problème. Donc, nous devons fournir beaucoup d'efforts en matière de technologie et en matière de ressources, les ressources internes. On peut les mobiliser. L'Afrique n'est pas pauvre, comme on le voit, les pays où il y a eu des coups d'État, vous avez vu. Et les masses d'argent qui sortent, il y a les ressources minières qui sont là. On a de l'argent, qu'on essaie de travailler dans ce sens pour que les ressources soient bien gérées et pour que l'Afrique soit l'Afrique que nous souhaitons et que le monde soit juste et équitable. Merci à tout le monde. La traduction en français. Merci bien, Caroline. Et merci à tous les camarades de tous les pays. Merci. Et la séance est close.
Merci et félicitations à Kabengo pour cet management vraiment de haut niveau. Hein.
Ok, merci à tout le monde. Bonne suite.
Thank you and bye-bye. Thank you all colleagues and thank you everyone for participating. See you next.
Thank you. Thank you.